to Beat School again. Today, I want to start off by telling you about our book, Beat School. It's entitled Beat School. And in this book, you're going to get a lot of different study strategies, study techniques. You're going to get a lot of different descriptions about professors and different types of professor testing strategies. Any and everything that's going to help you to get to the next level in terms of your college education is going to be contained within this book. So definitely get yourself a copy. I promise you it will do you some good. So let's go ahead and get into today's topic of discussion, which is going to be note-taking. Now, note-taking is going to be a very, very critical thing for you to be able to properly do. If you don't take notes correctly, you can't study correctly. If you don't study correctly, you won't do well on your tests. So just like building a house, when building a house, you have to have a solid foundation. With your note-taking, you also need a solid foundation, because if you don't take notes appropriately, you won't be set up for the best success when you're taking your test. So now I want to walk through how I would take my notes in class. I want to walk through that same strategy with you. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to turn to a topic that people have a lot of difficulty with, which is biology. Even the students that I teach, they can't stand biology. It isn't necessarily that the information is hard, however, it's just that the information hasn't been conveyed the best, and they have a harder time understanding the concept of biology. So if we take our notes appropriately, we can bridge that gap between what we're trying to understand and the information that's provided. So let's go ahead and take a look. We're starting out with the building blocks of molecules in relation to our topic of biology. Now, when you first start out reading through a document or a book, you want to look at all the aesthetic things of the book. You want to look at the page number. You want to look at the title of the chapter, Chemistry of Life. We're talking about life. You want to look at your subtitles here, the building blocks of molecules. And you want to go on and look further at the additional titles that you have, atoms. And we look at pictures as well. We see a picture right here, and that's where we're going to stop for today. We're just going to cover this section here. So, well, actually, let's cover this one right here so we can get a little bit more in depth. Now, we're focusing on atoms. So I want to come over here to my Word document, and I want to create a table. I want to organize how I want to create my notes. So I create a 2-column table. In the first column on the left-hand corner, I want to write my topic here, building blocks of molecules. Then I want to come over here to my right-hand corner and I write the subtopic, atoms. So, underneath atoms, we're going to start out with our first little bit of information. So we read our first sentence and we see that an atom is the smallest component of an element. Stop. Write that down. You want to put the emphasized information. And let's shorthand our notes as well. So we'll say atom, smallest component of an element. All right, next, let's read through the next bit of information. Okay. All right, then we get an example. One hydrogen atom has all the properties of an element of hydrogen. Okay, that's gobbledygook. Let's keep going. Hydrogen atoms cannot be broken down into anything smaller. All right, we want to write that down. It's an example of an atom. Again, a hydrogen atom cannot be broken down into anything smaller. All right, next, we'll read on down further. Okay, and we're looking for the important information. Okay, we're continuing to go. All right, we see something right here that's kind of important, well, actually very important. In multicellular organisms, molecules can interact to form cells that combine to form tissues which make up organs. So I see a hierarchy here. So when you have a hierarchy, you start from a smaller component and you go to a larger component, or you start from a larger component and you go to a smaller component. So for the sake of atoms, we'll start out with the smallest component, which is an atom. So we'll say atom. And then the next largest component is a molecule, because atoms are going to combine to create molecules. Then they combine to form tissues. And then we draw another arrow, which leads us to organs, the next in the hierarchy. All right. Then we scroll down to our next paragraph. All atoms contain protons, electrons, and neutrons. That is a key sentence. All atoms contain protons, electrons, and neutrons. Then we want to talk about these protons, electrons, and neutrons. So we search for that, and we see our first bolded word. Bolded words mean that they are important. They're a term that you need to know. So proton, what is a proton? Let's talk about it. A proton, positively charged particle. So you want to write that down here. Positively charged particle. What else about a proton? It resides in the nucleus. And here brings up a very important part of when you're reading through information. If you see a word that you aren't very sure of, do not skip it. For instance, if you don't know what nucleus is, don't skip the word nucleus. You want to find out what nucleus is. So you want to look up the definition of nucleus. I can look it up right here. And right here for nucleus in the Apple preview document, I can see that nucleus is the central and most important part of an object movement. Okay, so you see all of this. All of these different explanations kind of give you an understanding of what a nucleus is. If you want to do that, you could look at the information behind the word nucleus, and you see that it says the core of an atom. So right here, I'm going to bold in nucleus, and I'm going to write after it the core of an atom. So the nucleus is the core of an atom. Now, I want to go on further to understand more about our proton. Has a mass of 1. I'm going to write that down. Mass of 1. What else? And a charge of +1. So I'm going to write that down too. Charge of +1. All right, so that's the end of our proton description. We'll next go to our electron. So what else about an electron? Electron has a negative charge. It's a negatively charged particle. Let's write that down. Negatively charged particle. Okay, travels in space around the nucleus. Okay, so that sounds kind of vague. I'm not quite sure what it is, right? So let's read on. In other words, which this means that what we were just talking about here travels around the space of the nucleus, or travels in the space around the nucleus, rather. This is going to be a translation right here. This what in other words means. It resides outside of the nucleus. So let's write that down. Resides outside of the nucleus. All right, and we read further. Has a negligible mass, and that means it has no mass. Mass is disregarded. No mass. Also, it has a charge of -1. Let's write that down too. Excuse me, I did that. All right, and a charge of -1. Next, that's going to be everything about our electron. Let's focus on the last component, which is a neutron. Neutron. What about a neutron? Like proton. Key words right here. Like proton means it's very similar to a proton. Similar to proton is what I'm going to write here. Resides in the nucleus. So the words following like protons tells me the similarities the neutron has to the proton. So it resides in the nucleus, just like the proton. Resides in the nucleus. That's what we're going to write. Next, our next sentence, neutrons have a mass of 1 and no charge. So we're going to write that. Mass of 1, no charge, and we'll stop right here. After we've written our information, we want to go look at pictures. We want to see what is our picture telling us. And you can see here, you have a picture which has electrons, neutrons, protons, and the word nucleus here. So nucleus, we see that's the core of an atom, remember? So we can see right here, the inner part, this inner circle is the nucleus. And here's a line coming from the word nucleus to this particular compartment. And within this circle, you see neutrons and protons. That's just like what we saw in the words here in the description. It says resides in the nucleus. Proton resides in the nucleus. So this picture is explaining what we see in our description. Also, you see electron travels in the space around the nucleus. Remember, it resides on the outside of the nucleus. We go to our electrons, we look at our picture, and we see here, they're around. Here's the nucleus on the inside, and here are the electrons on the outside. Exactly. This is exactly what we're seeing that's been described in the actual description. And also, if you want to look at it, you'll see that the electrons have a minus sign on the inside, which tells us that they have a negative charge. Again, electrons have a negative charge. For our protons, they have a positive charge because they have this plus sign within them. Again, positively charged particle. And our neutrons have no charge, which we see right here, no charge. So they don't have a minus or plus sign at all. Now we've explained, we've understood our illustration. Let's go over to our notes. Now we want to take our notes that we've written on the right-hand side of this column, and we want to write questions on the left-hand side. So let's take this and create questions. And it's very important that we create questions that we would want to see or that we'd imagine our professor might put on our test. So I'll go ahead and start writing the first few questions. Which of the following is the smallest component of an element? And you want to make these kind of hard. Molecule, tissue, organ, or an atom. And you don't want to put the answer, because what you're going to do is that you're going to cover this side of the information after you finish making your questions, and you're going to test yourself over this information without looking at the information on the right-hand column. All right, so next, our next question is going to be, a proton has which of the following charges? Positive, negative, no charge, or none of the above. And let's write one more question down. Which of the following is contained within the nucleus? A, proton. B, neutron. C, electron. D, two of the above. Or E, none of the above. All right, perfect. So now we've written our questions. We have the information on the right side that we use to make our questions on the left side. So again, we want to now, let's create a shape. Let's insert a shape. I want to take this right here. Wow, there we go, right there. So now we have the information covered, and while we're studying, we want to only look at these questions right here. We want to try to answer these questions to the best of our ability without looking at the information right here. But again, you can cover this information and you can test yourself, and you want to utilize this method to study information, and I guarantee you this makes learning so much more simple. You have a study guide and you'll be on your right track to attain the grade that you need to attain to pass your class. Thank you. This has been great. This has been awesome. I hope you all utilize this strategy. Again, follow us on YouTube, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You can click the subscribe button below, please. We love subscribers. And again, be school.